One board would deny the license on the basis that the person is not fit and proper. And although the new board had no new application before it or no new information, they were picking up the files out of the registry and approving the persons on a willy-nilly basis. And that is how several criminal elements got licenses. I want to state that I joined the FLA in 2017, June. At the time of my joining of the FLA, I noticed that there are certain persons who were getting gun licenses, and the method used was questionable. I brought it to the then chairman of the board's attention. The first alert was raised in June, the same month that I joined the FLA, of a letter from a superintendent in Westmoreland outlining 2 pages of adverse finding on an individual that was involved in a lot of scamming and gang activities, who had secured a firearm license. And my checks revealed that the person did receive the firearm license, although the board was aware that he was involved in nefarious activities. The board of the FLA then resigned in August. It is to be noted that the deputy chairman at the time was Dennis Meadows. After a review by MOCA and the administration of the FLA, headed by myself, we discovered hundreds of criminal elements from Westmoreland, St. James, Trelawney, Manchester, Clarendon, who received gun licenses, although the police had warned against granting any such license to those individuals. They ranged from convicted murderers, persons who had a conviction for illegal possession of firearms, robbery with aggravation, rape, drug trafficking, and let me state it categorically clear here, that those information were present on the file before the board granted the approval. And during the time that Mr. Meadows served on the FLA board, he signed every single one of them approving them. And I'll go further to state to you that there are cases so blatant that the board on which Mr. Meadows sat and he signed denied initially that individual the firearm license on the basis that they said the persons were not fit and proper. And mere weeks later, the same members of the board who denied the person picked up the file and granted the person the license. And I'll share one such case with you in detail now. One such case is a gentleman convicted in Mandeville of illegal possession of firearm and ammunition, and he was sentenced. He was found in a car with an illegal firearm and was arrested by the police and went to court and pled guilty and was sentenced. That gentleman later applied for a firearm license. The board of the FLA denied him the license on the basis that he had a conviction and that he had lied on his application that he never had a conviction. That application was denied in 2014, August. Yet, without a new application or without any appeal being filed by the gentleman, the very said board granted him a license 3 months later. So a convicted criminal who had an illegal firearm is now granted a legal firearm by the Firearm Licensing Authority Board. And it is curious what the board said. The board said that after interviewing the gentleman and noting the sentence that was imposed by the court on him seemed to be below the minimum that the law requires for the gentleman to be given. And therefore they are going to side on the side of leniency and grant this gentleman a firearm license. Jackie was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. At the time of the sentence, it was 1999 and 15 years were taken to 2014. Jackie later applied for a firearm license. All the report by the investigators, the director of investigation, the police, went against Jackie getting a license. The board of the FLA at the time, on which Mr. Meadows was the deputy chairman, and which Mr. Meadows signed, denied Jackie a license in June 2016. On the basis that he is not fit and proper to hold a firearm. But 10 weeks later, the very said Dennis Meadows signed approving Jackie in getting a firearm license. No appeal, no new application. The decision is granted for him to get a license. Now, I want to state that my check so far revealed over 200 such cases of persons with criminal trace, criminal conviction, who have been approved firearm licenses. Now, I want to state that once a person is granted a license firearm, that person now has access to legal rounds of ammunition, which means that person can walk into any firearm dealership to acquire ammunition legally. Now, a Don in the corporate area got 4 gun licenses through the FLA. A man extradited to the United States and returned was allowed 4 gun licenses. What was curious is that the board was reversing decisions of the previous board, meaning one board would deny the license on the basis that the person is not fit and proper. And although the new board had no new application before it or no new information, they were picking up the files out of the registry and approving the persons on a willy-nilly basis. And that is how several criminal elements got licenses. During the period where persons were getting gun licenses under questionable circumstances, everybody made money from it. So the ranges made money because each time you attend on a range for training, you have to pay. The dealers made money because they were selling far more firearms and ammunition because of the sheer number of persons who were getting gun licenses. In fact, during the period 1 year, dealers sold $1.2 billion worth of firearms based on the sheer volume of persons who were getting gun licenses. So the dealerships across the country benefited from the corrupt practices of the FLA. Now, based on the restrictionist approach that is taken now, it has resulted in far less persons getting firearm licenses, and the board has been quite stringent in its decision as to who gets firearm licenses. Now that has led to a lowering of the sales and by extension their profits. And of course, the dealers, I'm aware, and several other persons have lobbied for my removal from the FLA. because they feel that the policies being implemented are strict and are affecting their business.